The first time I heard her voice again was on a tape that shouldn't exist, buried under 2 floors of silence inside a sealed archive in Tempelhof. Someone left a message. Just 6 words. If you want to understand, go down. I did. They said the tunnel was closed, flooded, erased from the books. But when I stepped past that last hatch, the air still knew my name. And the ghosts? They were waiting. This isn't about secrets we stole. It's about the ones we left behind. Faces missing from photos. Uniforms with no records. A name carved into metal that wasn't supposed to be there. Hers. Before I change my mind. Hit that like button. Subscribe if this already made your stomach turn. And tell me what city you're in. And what time it is. I want to know where people still remember tunnels that were never supposed to open again. It started with the envelope. No markings. No return address. Just my name, typed on a folded corner like someone didn't have time to care. Inside, a cassette tape standard BASF, the kind we used in '61 for field transmissions. But this one had no label, no timestamp. Just a single line, spoken in a breath I recognized and hoped never to hear again. If you want to understand, go down to level -3. Tempelhof had long stopped being useful, but I still had a key. Old habits. I told myself it was just curiosity, but my hands shook when I passed the 3rd door on the right, where they used to store the dead. Drops no one came to collect. That's where they left it. The message, the echo, the bait, and I bit. Rudo Station was colder than I remembered. Berlin cold doesn't hit your skin. It seeps into your joints, slow and personal. I didn't go there for justice. Hell, I didn't even go for answers. I went because part of me never left that tunnel in '59. I needed to see if it was still breathing. The janitor booth had a light on. No janitor. Just a clipboard with smeared ink and a coffee mug still warm. I waited 5 minutes. No one came. So I went down. The 3rd sublevel wasn't on the official schematics. It never had been. That was the point. Operation GOLD's backbone sat right below Berlin's veins, tapping the Soviet lines like a parasite with manners. We listened. We logged. We buried everything that didn't fit. But someone had been there recently. The first clue wasn't a sound. It was a smell. Dust, metal, and something faintly sweet, like rotting flowers. Then the sound came so subtle, I thought it was my pulse at first. But no. A faint creak like wood under pressure. Not natural. Not mechanical. Deliberate. There was a panel in the concrete, right where the old tunnel should have started. It shouldn't have opened, but it did. Someone had unsealed it. The hinges were oiled. The dust brushed away, just enough for boots. Mine didn't match. I hesitated. Then I stepped through. Inside, it was darker than dark. The kind that makes you forget your own shape. I walked slowly, one hand on the wall, counting each breath to stay steady. At 10 meters, I heard the creak again, closer now, but nothing moved. Just the air, getting thicker. That's when I saw it. A cracked wooden bench, half eaten by mold. And beside it, a green shaded desk lamp. Exactly where it used to be. And next to the lamp, God help me, a single cigarette still fresh. American brand. Lucky strike. Nobody in the Stasi smoked that. Which meant one thing. Someone else came back. After the shutdown. After the cables were cut. After the lies were written. I knelt beside the bench and ran my fingers under the wood. The initials were still there, scratched in by a trembling hand, maybe mine, or maybe hers. The tape had said, understand. But this wasn't understanding. This was remembering. And memory, down here, had teeth. I stood up too fast. My head grazed a hanging pipe, and something clattered behind me like metal brushing metal. I turned. No one. But the creak returned closer, louder, angry. Except it wasn't footsteps. It was breath. Slow, measured, matching mine. That's when I knew something was off. But the worst was yet to come. I didn't go there to find her name. I went to make sure it wasn't there. The bench, the lamp, the smoke, those were just markers. But the list was the real reason. It had been kept under lock in the technical archive beneath Glogor Strage, or so they claimed. But someone had moved it, buried it here, in the old junction room between relay sectors. I knew the way blind. When I found the locker, I didn't use gloves, didn't need to. The metal remembered me. So did the lock. It clicked open like it had been waiting. Inside, the folder, not sealed, not hidden, just there. The paper had yellowed at the edges. No stamps, no dates, just rows of names typed in courier, column by column. Most were fake. I knew that. Hell, I created half of them. But some hit harder than expected. Mine wasn't there, but hers was. KD. That was all she ever left behind. No rank, no division. Just those two letters, and the whisper of a perfume I haven't smelled since Kennedy's first speech. I sat down, on the floor. Couldn't stand. Couldn't breathe. We'd made a pact, her and I, back in '59. If things went south, we'd both walk away. No trace, no shadow, no names and lists. I held my part. Apparently, she didn't. The sound of dripping water pulled me back. Regular, rhythmic, but not natural. It was coming from a conduit in the ceiling one that had been sealed shut during the dismantling. I climbed a crate and twisted the latch. It hissed, then gave. Inside, a small tube. Standard courier type, brass-capped, wrapped in black tape. I slid it into my pocket without opening it. Some messages are louder before they're read. A sudden hum filled the corridor. Deep electric. The lamp flickered once, twice, then went out. I stayed still. In the dark. Everything feels closer. I waited, counted to 20, then to 40. Then I lit a match. Small comfort, but it gave me just enough light to find the bench again. That's when I saw the scratch marks, fresh ones under the desk. 4 vertical lines, close together, like someone had tried to etch something in a rush. My heart skipped. Underneath them, one last letter. K. Been here. Not 59. Not in some old memory. Recently. Which meant the list wasn't just incomplete, it was wrong. Deliberately wrong. And whoever planted it wanted me to find it. To see her name and react. I put the folder back, closed the locker, and stepped into the corridor again. But something had changed. There was a smell in the air, sulfur and oil. A kind I hadn't sensed since Hungary, when we used to burn files in barrels. And the floor was warm. That room hadn't seen heat since the Soviets pulled the cables. Someone was trying to wake something up. I took out the tube, opened. It. Inside, a single key, long, thin, coated in grease. No tag, no instructions. But I knew where it went. We all did. The red hatch. That hatch hadn't been opened in years. No reason to. It led to a split chamber we used only during active TAPS briefings. Storage, interrogation when things got messy. Why bring it back now? Why send me? Unless I wasn't the only one left with promises to break. I walked back to the panel, slid the key into the hatch lock, and waited. 1 turn. 2. Third. Forced. Then the click. The door groaned open like a throat, clearing after decades of silence. Behind it, the tunnel dash unchanged. Except, for one thing, the tape markers were fresh, and they didn't lead forward. They led back. The deeper I walked, less sense it made. That tunnel was supposed to be dead sealed after the British pulled the last of their listening gear, and the Soviets paraded their little discovery to the press, but the air didn't feel dead. It felt charged. I knew the markers by heart. Every meter had a strip of red fabric back in the day, glued to the wall with industrial paste. Ours. This time, the tape was white, cleaner, measured, placed in increments of 5 dot at the 10th marker. I stopped. Was something on the ground? A soft crunch under my boot. Not gravel dot ash dot. I knelt and pinched it between my fingers, light, dry, and sharp dash smelling dot gunpowder dot old. But present. This wasn't just memory anymore. Someone had brought weapons down. Here. And that meant someone expected resistance. My flashlight flickered again. I tapped it against my palm. It steadied. I turned the beam to the wall and froze. Scratched into the concrete just above eye level were 2 initials .K .D again, but this time with a date, April 1961. 2 years after she disappeared. No one filed a report. No one launched a search. She was just gone, folded into some forgotten memo and crossed out in pencil. And yet, here she was, still echoing in shadows. I took a step forward, deeper into the tunnel's bend. That's when I smelled it. Tobacco. American Blend. Lucky Strike. The same scent I'd found earlier. Not stale fresh. I wasn't alone. My hand went to my belt, instinctively reaching for a pistol I hadn't carried in years. Useless gesture. All I had was memory, and a steel key that still stank of oil. I turned off the flashlight, let my eyes adjust. The silence wasn't silence anymore, it was breath. Measured. Close. Someone was holding it back, just like I was. I didn't move, didn't speak. Then came the scrape, barely audible, like a boot dragging half an inch across concrete. Not near, not far. The kind of distance you feel, not here. I waited a full minute. Then another dot, nothing dot, so I moved forward. Slow. Each step a question dot at the end of the bend. I saw the source of the scent. A crushed cigarette, still smoldering, placed carefully on the metal rim of an old phone junction box. Not tossed, placed. Like a marker or a signature. The box door was open. Inside, cables, severed. But someone had reattached 2 with surgical tape. They didn't function. But the illusion was enough dot, and hanging from a hook, where the switchboard used to be, was a single field headset, the kind we used in isolated tap stations. One ear muff was cracked. The other had something etched into the plastic casing. A word, Irina. Not initials this time. A name. Real dot. And suddenly it all came back. She wasn't supposed to be listed. Not even by her alias. She'd come to Berlin under a ghost profile Soviet. Defector, American sympathizer, audio engineer. But the truth? She belonged to no one. She worked the signals. She rerouted conversations, edited tapes, deleted lives. Mine included. I reached for the headset, paused, and looked around. Nothing. But my hand was trembling. When I touched the leather pad, it was warm, like someone had worn it minutes ago. I pulled back. Then I saw the photo tucked into the junction box, barely visible, black and white, grainy, but there. 2 figures in the tunnel, one sitting on the bench, one standing over her. I didn't recognize the man, but the woman, her silhouette, her stance. I'd seen her 100 times in profile, splicing wire with her teeth. Irina. And the strangest part? She was smiling. I stepped back. Suddenly, the air shifted. Not cold or heavier, like the tunnel exhaled. That was when I knew this wasn't an investigation. It was an invitation. And I'd already accepted. I didn't even know. I was holding it until the edge bit into my palm. The key, still greasy, still warm. I don't remember pulling it from my pocket, but there it was, pressed between my fingers like a relic I hadn't earned. I looked back toward the bend. The smoldering cigarette was gone. No ash. No trace. Just a flickering bulb somewhere. Deeper in the tunnel, pulsing like a heartbeat out of sync. Ahead, a hatch I'd only seen once in my life, during training. We weren't supposed to open it. It led to a chamber built for emergencies, jammed signals, live taps, holding rooms. Back then, it was padlocked shut. Now, it had a new lock. Not Soviet, not NATO, civilian issue. Black-coated, heavy. The key slid in with a click. My hand hesitated, not out of fear, out of memory. That door had been shut long before the war even cooled. I turned the key. 3 clicks, the hatch hissed, and then opened. Inside, it felt colder. Not from temperature, but from silence. The kind that crushes your chest and makes you wonder if you forgot how to breathe, hanging from the ceiling cables. Dozens of them, some wrapped in red tape, some bare copper. And in the center, a circle of old field telephones, suspended like fruit ready to fall. None of them rang. They just swayed. I stepped forward, carefully, each movement deliberate. At the edge of the circle, I paused. One phone, olive green, chipped, cord frayed, had something scratched into the receiver. KD, April 1961. The same date. The same signature. The same ghost. I reached for it, then froze. There was something under my boot, soft, but resistant. I looked down. A small leather pouch. Old. Worn. I bent to pick it up. Inside, a broken compass, cracked glass, rusted needle. But it spun violently when I held it up. As if the tunnel didn't know where north was anymore. Or didn't care. She'd carried a compass like this. Said it helped her feel like things still pointed somewhere, even when we didn't. I sat down on the metal grate. Let the cold soak through. The phones didn't ring. But I could feel something moving in the cables above tension. Pull, like weight. And then I noticed it. Every phone had a nameplate, rusted over. I wiped one clean. Anderson. Another. Weiss. A third. Blank. And a fourth. Mine. Dotched. Not stamped. Not official. Someone had made it by hand. And hung it here for me. The rage didn't come all at once. It bled inquiet and mean. Who had done this? Who had traced our names, our memories, onto dying machines like some museum of betrayal? This wasn't a shrine. It was a trap. Or worse, a confession I hadn't agreed to. I stood. My fingers brushed. The compass again, still twitching in its pouch like a nervous animal. And then I heard it, a faint static hum. Not from the phones, from above, somewhere, in the ceiling. I tilted my head. There, hidden behind cable bundles, another receiver. Different shape, British make. I climbed one of the old lockers, reached through the mess of wire, and pulled it free. The line was live, not connected to anything I recognized. I put it to my ear. Silence. Then a breath, and one word. Continue. No name, no accent, no explanation. Just that. I dropped the receiver, stepped back, and as I did, one of the hanging phones began to sway violently. Then another. Then all of them. No sound. No voices. Just motion. And I remembered something she told me once, laughing, half drunk. The tunnel doesn't end where the map stops. It ends when you stop asking why. I didn't know what she meant back then. Now I wasn't sure if I ever wanted to know. There was no sound. Not even the hum. I stood there, surrounded by swaying phones, my own name etched into one of them like a tombstone I hadn't earned. The silence wasn't absence. It was pressure. It pressed behind my eyes, tightened in my throat. Even breathing felt disrespectful, like I was interrupting something older than all of us. I stepped back into the hallway, closed the hatch, and leaned against the wall. My shirt was damp, not from sweat. The walls were sweating too. Moisture ran in tiny rivers down the concrete, gathering at my boots. The tunnel was exhaling again. I walked further, past the junction, past the old listening posts, until I reached the point where the concrete changed texture. Older, rougher, Soviet design. We never used this wing during cold. That's when I saw it. A box military-grade, olive green, rusted at the hinges, but intact. I dropped to one knee and ran my hand across the lid. The symbol hit me like a slap. A triangle, inverted, unfamiliar, not Soviet, not NATO. Something else. Had no place here. The latch opened without resistance. Inside, photographs. Dozens. Black and white, high contrast, printed on thick stock. Faces scratched out violently. Every image had the same pattern. Uniforms intact, insignias visible, but no identities. Like someone had purged the soul but left the frame. On the back of one photo, written in red pencil, "You knew." Even then, I flipped through them quickly. No clues. Then I saw it one uniform. I did recognize. Not hers. Mine. Same patch. Same lapel pin. Same fold on the sleeve from where I used to roll cigarettes into it. But no face. Just the outline of a man I didn't want to be anymore. I dropped the photo. It landed in the puddle near the box. Soaked instantly. I let it sink. When I looked back at the box, something else was there. A cassette tape. Unlabeled. Same type as the one that started all this. But this one was warm. Not metaphorically, actually warm. Like it had been used recently. I picked it up and slipped it into the inside pocket of my coat. I didn't dare play it. Not here. Not yet. I stood. And that's when I felt it again. That wrong kind of gravity. The sense that your body is being watched, not from a distance, but from memory. Like the tunnel itself was recalling you. Something brushed past my ear. Not air. Something colder. I turned. No one. But the shadows shifted in the periphery. I needed to get out. I moved fast now. Back through the bend. Back past the bench, the lamp, the scratched initials, and then footprints. Fresh. Boot prints in the moisture. Same size as mine, but not mine. Facing the opposite direction. Heading toward the chamber I just left. They hadn't been there before. I should have left right then. But I followed them. Step by step. At the entrance to the hatch. The prints stopped. Right at the door. No turn. Go retreat. Just vanished. And on the wall, scratched into the rust, another triangle. Inverted. Smaller. Deeper. Like someone had carved it with purpose. That was the moment I realized this wasn't surveillance. It was ritual. Someone had built something down here, and I had walked right into it, not as an agent, not as a witness, not as part of it. I touched the broken compass in my coat pocket. It didn't spin this time. It didn't move at all. Like it finally gave up. And I understood. Some places don't echo. They absorb. I climbed back up to level -2, faster than I should have. My knees cracked. Breath shortened, but I didn't care. The tape in my coat felt like a weight, like it had mass, like it was pulling me backward, down, into that circle of phones and broken names. I reached the surface-level storage corridor, the one beneath the old Rudo service platform. Dim light. A single bulb swinging from exposed wire. The hallway was supposed to be empty, but the earth was disturbed. One of the beams, low and rotting, had a patch of soft dirt beneath it. Fresh. I crouched, dug with my hands. Cold, damp soil under fingernails I hadn't cleaned since Berlin meant something. A glove, leather, black, right hand only. Old NATO issue, but customized stitched initials along the edge of the wrist flap. KD. I closed my eyes. Not just because it was hers, because inside the glove was something harder. Film negative, still curled. Intact dot, I rolled it gently, careful not to tear it. I didn't have a reader. But instinct told me it wasn't blank dot. Someone had left it for me. But why bury it? Unless it wasn't meant for me. Back in Tempelhof, we were taught how to plant false leads. Objects with just enough truth to make you doubt your own memory. This glove had her scent. Her initials, but I wasn't sure anymore what her meant. Pocketed the negative and stood. The light above flickered, then held. That's when I heard it dot steps dot soft dot measured dot 2 aisles down. I moved fast quiet hugging the shelves dot nothing dot no. Movement. No shadow. But the air had changed again. That pressure in the ears. The sound before a voice. I turned the corner and found nothing. But the dirt dot dot more. Prints different from mine. Wider. Heavier. Rubber soles. Leading out of the corridor. Toward the elevator shaft that hadn't functioned since '63. I followed. Not because I wanted to. Because I couldn't not. The shaft was half open. Manual door forced aside. I peered down dot empty dot. Then I looked up dot and saw a reflection in the cracked mirror bolted above the elevator call box. Dot it wasn't mine, just a shoulder. A coat, turning away. Gone by the time I spun around. I opened the side door to the old electrical closet. Dust fell like memory. And there it was. A piece of paper taped to the inside. Wall. Blank at first glance. But when I angled it toward the light, faint lines. Emerged chemical residue. Invisible ink. The kind we used in only the most sensitive courier routes. I folded it carefully. Slid it behind the cassette. I needed to get out. But I couldn't leave yet. Not until I saw what was on that negative dot. It took me 2 days to find. Someone with a reader who wouldn't ask questions. An old contact. Zurich. Former East German archivist. Blind in one eye. Paid in untraceable bonds and guilt. He called me 2 days later. Didn't speak dot, just sent the image dot. It burned through the screen. The tunnel dot angle. From inside the central relay. One figure dot standing dot back to the camera. Holding a folder under one. Arm dot same folder I'd found on the bench. Same green tape. Same red triangle. The figure was unmistakable. Not because of the face. There was no face. Just a blur where the features should have been. But the stance? The coat? The scar down the left wrist, visible even in grainy shadow? It was me dot same height. Same profile dot same goddamn way of standing when I thought I was alone. Except the timestamp on the image was recent. Weeks old dot too recent. I hadn't been in that section of the tunnel for years. Or at least, I didn't remember being there. But the man in the image, he was holding something I hadn't let go of yet. His real name was never in the files. We called him Hammerschmidt because that's what he liked engraved on his lighter. Carried it everywhere, even when it ran out of fuel. Said it made people believe he still had fire left. He trained me in signals. In silence. In vanishing. Said the only thing more dangerous than being watched was being remembered. They said he disappeared in '58 last seen crossing into Soviet Berlin with a forged journalist badge and a briefcase full of empty film. No one cried. No one searched. He was the kind of ghost we didn't chase dot, so when I saw his handwriting stapled to the back of the negative, I froze. I recognized the curl in the H, the slashed T's, the slanted pressure near the margins. He'd written only 7 words. You. Remember because I trained you to. Not a threat, a reminder, or maybe a trigger. I turned the paper over, looking for more dot, nothing dot, but suddenly everything else felt different. The files, the tape, even the glove dot, as if they weren't fragments I'd found, but steps he'd left behind. Knowing I'd follow, that old bastard was leading me again, and I hated how natural it felt. I booked a return to Berlin. Quiet route. No digital trail. Back to the sub-basement of GAUER. Back to the place I'd first seen him smile and tell me, "You'll die down here someday, but not today." I forced the old door open. Dust exploded like memory. Everything was still where I'd left it, except now there was a photo pinned to the corkboard that hadn't been there before. A still frame. From surveillance. Low quality. But I could make out the shape of a man walking through the underpass near Rudohood. Pulled low, but posture familiar. I flipped it over. One sentence. Keep walking. The ink was fresh. That night, I dreamed in fragments. Static, cables, a red triangle over a doorway I couldn't find in the waking world. When I opened my eyes, the compass in my coat was gone. Gone. In its place, the lighter dot, his dot scratched. Cold. Empty. But it clicked. 3 times. Then silence. I went to the only place left, an auxiliary junction chamber buried beneath the French sector. Decommissioned in '60. Never cleared. I still had keys. Inside. The lights worked. One bulb. Faint green dot, and on the table. A manila envelope. Unmarked. Inside. A report. Not typed. Handwritten. My name. My ops. My disappearances. And at the bottom, a stamp I'd never seen before. A triangle. Inverted. Same as the box in the tunnel. Turned the page. A list of names. Redacted. Except one. Irina D. Status. Operational. Not was. I felt my chest lock. Behind me, a sound. Not a footstep. A shift. I turned. Nothing. But in the mirror. On the far wall, my reflection wasn't alone. Someone stood beside me. Half out of frame. Wearing his coat. Smiling. Then gone. There was a time when I could walk into the Omega archives and get whatever I needed. A name, a date, a file that never officially existed. I still remembered the smell, vinegar and ink, old leather binding, rusted staples that snapped when you flipped a page too fast. That time was gone. I called from a payphone near Friedrichstrasse, used an old access code we swore was unbreakable. Back in '61, they answered, but not with a greeting. Just one word. Revoked. I didn't argue, didn't explain, didn't ask, because I already knew. The deeper you dig, the more invisible you become. I asked to speak with a man who owed me a favor. He didn't take the call, but a courier arrived at my hotel. 6 hours later. Black gloves, no eye contact, handed me an envelope sealed with wax. No stamp, no return. Just a triangle, inverted, pressed into the wax. Inside, a denial. A formal statement that I was never assigned to Operation Gold. That I had no authorization to access sublevels in Rudo. That no personnel file existed under my name. Prior to 1963, I read it twice, then burned it in the sink. The water turned gray. Later that night, I called a different number. Zurich, the archivist, asked him to scan the film. Again, he hesitated, said something wasn't right. He'd looked at the negative under different light. There were faint edges not visible on the original scan, like double exposure, or two realities fighting for space. One image, superimposed on the figure holding the folder. Not another face, another outline. Feminine. Slight. Irina. No. Younger. Different. Still wrong. I hung up. Next morning, a brown envelope waited outside my door. Unmarked. But inside, a map. Hand. Drawn. Detailed. The tunnel, the sectors, the stations. And one portion outlined in red marker. A segment I didn't remember, didn't recognize, didn't exist on any schematic I'd seen in 20 years, but the handwriting was familiar. His same blocky scrawl Hammerschmidt used on every chalkboard back in training. The red segment led to an unlisted subchamber. No entry point. No ventilation. Just a box drawn in tight lines. No labels dot next to it. One phrase in pencil. She never left. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't need to. The map burned behind my eyelids dot at dawn. I dressed, loaded my coat with everything I had compass. Lighter, photo, tape dot, and returned. The tunnel greeted me like it knew. The moisture was worse. Temperature lower. But I followed the route from the map, turned left at the collapsed segment, crossed under the old U-band frame, and there it was. A door I'd never seen. Steel. Sealed, but the red triangle was painted on its center. Sloppy, fast. With fingers, not brush. The door had no handle dot, no keyhole dot, just a slit wide enough for a cassette. I pulled the tape from my pocket dot, held it for a second, then slid it in. The door didn't open, but the wall buzzed, like circuitry, under concrete. A second later, a red light blinked once, and died. That's when I heard the voice dot faint, dot filtered dot from inside the wall. There are no lines anymore. Not hers, not his dot, someone else dot, or no one at all. I stepped back, looked around. Everything felt thinner, like the air had less substance dot, and for the first time, I wasn't sure I had ever left that place. Maybe I was still down there, or maybe I never. Came out dot, the envelope was thicker, this time dot, no wax seal. No triangle, just my name typed in Cyrillic. I hadn't seen my name written like that since Budapest, when we thought pretending to be defectors would buy us time. Inside, a folded sheet of old grid paper. Pencil lines, no legend, no direction. A tunnel map, but not the one I knew. This one had curves, detours, branches that were never part of Operation Gold. One section, drawn in red pencil, curved back on itself, ending in a solid square. A room dot, no. Access dot, no vents dot, no doors dot, just walls. Underneath, written in sharp strokes, we hear everything. I traced the red line with my finger, then laid the map against the wall in my hotel room and stared dot. It didn't match the official blueprints. Didn't even match the one Hammerschmidt left me. But the handwriting? It was hers. I'd know those angry little loops anywhere. She'd written it, or copied it, or wanted me to believe she had. I packed and left without checking out. Made my way back through sectors that hadn't seen daylight in decades. Concrete swallowed the world. Again, I moved by memory now. Steps I'd taken in other shoes. Under other names, until I reached the bend before the red marked. Room, it was there, exactly where the map said it would be, except. It didn't look like a room, more like a cavity. The door wasn't metal, it was plastic, industrial. White, cracked. Along the edges like heat had warped it. On it, the same words, but handwritten this time, not in marker. Faded. I knocked once, nothing. At twice, a shift in pressure, like air rearranging itself. The door creaked open by 2 inches, no light, no sound. Just a warmth leaking from the crack, unnatural for a Berlin winter. I stepped inside, and the door closed behind me, no latch. No mechanism, just silence. Inside, the room felt wrong, too quiet, too smooth, no dust. No mold. No memory, I took 3 steps and froze. The walls weren't walls. They were panels, clean. White. Backlit. 1. A map, same as the one in the envelope. But animated lines pulsed slowly. Like veins, another panel lit up beside it. Photos, faces. Some scratched out. Some not. One of them was mine. I turned away. But another panel lit up, audio, a voice loop, broken. Distant. Target. Deviation 14A. Asset unstable. Another voice. Overlapping, female, laughing, just once. A short burst of joy that didn't belong here. Didn't belong to her. but sounded too close not to be. I stepped toward the panel, and it shut off. Behind me. Another click. The door had reappeared. Only now, there was something drawn on it in red. A triangle again, but inverted inside. A circle. New symbol. New rule. The air changed again. Heavier. Like it knew. I'd seen too much. I left. Didn't run. Didn't breathe right either. Just left when I reached the surface. The map in my coat had changed. Same paper. Same folds. But the room was gone. Erased. Only the red words remained. And this time, I swear to God, the ink was still wet. The Zurich archivist called again. His voice was low, measured. He said he'd found something tucked inside one of the tapes we recovered in 62, a section we never reviewed. Back then, there were too many hours to listen to, and no one wanted to relive what wasn't useful. But now he had. He sent me the digital still. I opened the file in a cafe in Dresden, surrounded by people who knew nothing about tunnels or ghosts or compromised. Memories. The image was blurry. Grainy, an interior shot from inside the tunnel's technical station. Reflections in the glass. Barely perceptible, but in the left panel, between the switches and blinking lights. A face. Smiling. Not posed. Not caught. Smiling. At the camera, but through it. It was Irina. Young, maybe 24. Hair pulled back tight. Uniform unzipped, just enough to show the ID. Badge hanging from her neck. She wasn't being followed. She wasn't being watched. She was working. She belonged there. And that changed everything. She hadn't been a target. She'd been part of it. Operator. I zoomed in on the badge. The name was blurred, but the photo was hers. Clear. Alive. The same day we thought she'd disappeared. She'd gone back inside. Voluntarily. I closed the laptop. Walked 3 blocks in a fog. Ended up at the train station without remembering how I got there. I sat on a bench and stared at the tracks. The compass in my pocket was gone again. I stopped checking. That night, I found a tape recorder in my hotel room. Not mine. No note. Just playing. Already halfway through. The voice was filtered, but hers, talking to someone, giving instructions. Loop between channel 7 and 10. Ignore everything after the 13th marker. The echo is bait. And silence. Then another voice. Male. Older. Not Hammerschmidt. Someone else. Confirm extraction. Long pause. Then Irina again. No extraction. No rescue. We monitor from within. The tape clicked off. No rewind. No playback. Just finality. She stayed. On purpose. For years. I told myself she ran. That we lost her. That they got to her before we could. But she was never theirs. She was never ours. She was part of something else. I went back to the photo. Stared at that. Smiled. Not forced. Not afraid. The smile of someone who knew more than me. Who always did. Who still does. That night, I dreamed again. The circle of phones. The triangle. The laughter behind. The glass. When I woke up, my pillow was wet. Not sweat. Tears. Maybe. I didn't check. I never slept again in that room. Or in that city. Because some knowledge doesn't rest. At paces. The next day, I received a courier envelope. No return. No sender. Inside. A single photo. Same image. Same station. Same smile. Only this time, I was in it too. Standing next to her, looking directly at the camera. Expressionless. Like I'd always been there. Only, I don't remember. I swear I don't remember. But I'm there. Plain as day. And the time stop? April 1961. Same as her note. Same as the scratched initials. Same as the day she was declared missing. I waited 3 days. Before going home. Maine felt fake after Berlin. Too still, too open. My house sat near the tree line, where fog drifted in like guilt, and the wind carried whispers that sounded too much like code. I placed the folder on the floorboards beneath my desk next to the tapes, the photos, the compass, the map. Each one, a piece of something I used to believe in. None of them felt real anymore. I pulled them out one by one. The photo of us in the tunnel too perfect. The light hit just right. My collar sat too smooth. Her smile too clear. It was like it had been staged for someone who knew how I'd react. The compass had spun again, but always to the left. Always to where the tunnel would have been if Berlin had existed beneath my feet. The cassette, the one that started it all, still worked. I played it. Same voice. Same 6 words. If you want to understand, go down. But this time, there was a second voice underneath, fainter, out of sync, repeating the same phrase in German, then Russian, then silence. The layering was too clean, too purposeful. It was manufactured. Planted. Staged. I felt something shift in my chest, like the floor dropped beneath me. All this time, I thought I was digging into a memory, but maybe I'd been placed inside a memory already designed, not to find truth, but to create a reaction, to test me. I burned the map first. It curled quick, flames licking the red lines until the room stank of graphite and ink. Then the photo, then the negatives. Each one fell into the tin pail, turning to ash without resistance. But the cassette? I hesitated. It was nothing. Just plastic and tape and a voice I used to love, but I couldn't shake the weight. I pulled it apart instead, unraveled it. Inch by inch. Let the magnetic strip spill across the table like guts. Then I lit a match. The flame took its time, crackled like static, smelled like oil and glue, and something else I couldn't name. I watched it burn down to a melted spool. No evidence. Left. No copy. No backup. Gone. I felt nothing. Not relief. Not loss. Just vacancy. Later that night, I stepped outside, walked to the edge of the woods where the power lines hung low and steady, stared at the stars, wondered if she was under the same sky somewhere, wondered if she ever existed at all. Then I heard a soft from beneath the ground, like a cable humming under tension. Just for a second, then gone. I didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, letting the silence pour back in, because something had shifted, something fundamental. Not in the evidence. In me. Not doubt. Dislocation. The sense that none of it her. The tunnel, the ghost of Hammerschmidt, was meant to be remembered, just repeated. By someone. Over and over, until it didn't matter what was true. Only that I believed it had been. I moved out of Maine a year later. Didn't sell the house. Just locked the door and left the key under a stone I doubt anyone will ever lift. I told myself I needed to disappear. But the truth? I couldn't bear living above what I'd buried. The cassette, the photos, the map that erased itself. Part of me that thought any of it could be understood. Now I live in cities where people don't look you in the eye. I like that. Feels safer. But I still walk. Always near old tunnels, subway stations, maintenance shafts, storm drains. Not to go in. Just to stand close and listen. Sometimes I hear it, a vibration too steady to be wind, a frequency that sits behind silence, not mechanical. Alive. Like the tunnel is breathing still. I felt it again last week in Prague, outside the ending metro line. A low pulse beneath the great. I stood there, longer than I should have. People walked past me. A few stared. I didn't care. It was their. Like a heartbeat under concrete. Familiar. Steady. And not mine. I pressed my hand to the metal vent and closed my eyes. The echo returned not in my ears. In my chest. Then a whisper, not words, just intention. A reminder that something we built to spy on others was always listening to us. From the beginning, and maybe still is. Not the Soviets, not the Americans, not even Hammerschmidt. The system, the shape, the idea of the tunnel itself. It doesn't need wires anymore. It just needs memory. That's how it survives. That's how it replicates. Through people like me, who never stopped listening and never stopped being listened to. I've come to believe the tunnel was never just a space. It was a test, a question, one we keep asking every time we chase ghosts through places we swore we sealed shut. Sometimes I wonder if Irina ever left, if she ever existed. I ever did. But then I remember her laugh, the way she bit her lip when she rewired junctions, the smell of cigarettes with graphite on her fingers. I think maybe none of it matters. Maybe the truth isn't what happened. Maybe the truth is what keeps humming, long after everyone else forgets to hear it. I never went back to Berlin, but sometimes, when I close my eyes, I'm there again beneath the city, past the broken hatch, inside the chamber of silent phones. One still rings, not loud, not urgent. Just waiting. And the worst part? I want to answer it. Even now, even knowing what it might say. The sound stays with me. In the hum of fridges, the rattle of old vents, the silence between radio stations. I used to call that paranoia. Now, I think it's memory. Engineered. Embedded. Alive. The last thing I kept was the lighter. Hammerschmidt's. I never filled it again. Just flick it open sometimes in the dark. 3 clicks. No flame, but the sound? Still. They're still mine. Asterisk if you made it this far, subscribe. And tell me in the comments if you ever heard about this tunnel. Or if you didn't, why you think that is.